And I told them, you have to come up here, because if you mess with a black person in Salt Lake, you mess with all of us. If you mess with a black person in Ogden, you mess with all of us. And if you mess with a black person in Logan, Utah, you mess with who? All of us. Whose streets are these? Whose streets? He was really driving a Honda Accord. He thought he was talking, he was like, room. I'll show them to hate racism. Black Lives Matter! Every single day! Correct, this next speaker, or wait. Am I supposed to go or are you supposed to go?
You call it.
Okay, I'll go last. I'll go after Mario. Get your pillow, because Mario's speech is, I don't know, 6 hours long. Mario drives down to Salt Lake City all the time. Last year, he called me on Christmas Eve and said, we had to do something for poor families for Christmas. And I said, Mario, it's the 23rd. And he's like, we can do it. And I'm like, goodbye, Mario. And he's like, we have to do it. And we raised thousands of dollars. And then Mario went out and bought them gifts. And yes, he did. Round of applause. And we drove around until 1 in the morning, knocking on people's doors, and they're like, why are you? We're like, yeah, we're Black Lives Matter, and we're like, we heard you needed Christmas. Mario also came down into Thanksgiving. He cooked Thanksgiving dinner for the homeless last year. He has an amazing heart. Now we're working on opening Utah's first Black History Museum in 2 weeks from today. And in case you don't know about that project, it is a mobile Black History Museum. We took a school bus and we painted it, we ripped the seats off it, and we are going to drive it from city to city, to school, so that these Black children can see real Black history. People are messing with Mario, and Logan is going to learn not to mess with Mario. Round of applause for Mario Mathis. Take your time.
All right, how are we doing today? Thanks so much for coming out in the cold. We know why we're here. Racism. The family is here with us that had their Black Lives Matter signs set on fire. So they're right here with us. Someone called me over there, and I went over there, and the sign was still smoldering when I got there. A police officer was there, and he was just a little too nonchalant. He just didn't act like it was a big deal. So he was talking to the mom, she's here, and he was just talking to her like one of her children dropped their ice cream cone on the sidewalk. It just was not right. So after he was finished talking, I asked for his name, and then I set up a meeting with the police department. They're not able to have the meeting until next Friday, but I'll be meeting with them next week. This is unacceptable. Imagine if that was his mom, or his sister, or the person that he loves that he goes home to. Imagine if that was his house. Would he have been nonchalant? It's absolutely unacceptable. We're not gonna take it. And I'm gonna let them know when I go down to the police department. Melanie, my friend, is gonna go with me. She's over there. And we're gonna talk to the police department. All right, well, let's talk about some other things. We're gonna talk about racism. I know it's Black History Month, and it might all mesh a little bit for you, but I want you to walk away with a lasting impression about why it's so important to fight against racism. We all saw what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. That's not an isolated event. I was so upset that people were walking around saying, how did we get here? This is not us, this is not America. How did we get here? We got here because of the hundreds of millions of complacent people. The hundreds of millions of people who are silent. That's how we got there. All the people back in 2016 and even 2015 that prioritized what about her emails over racism. You knew that man was a racist. I knew he was a racist. And if you sit around and tolerate that kind of stuff, and if you are able to prioritize what about her emails over racism, you're why January 6th happened. We have to learn to not tolerate it. I remember, and tolerate is even not the word I want to use, but in that context, yes. I kind of don't like the word tolerate, and this is why, or tolerance. This is why. I remember growing up, I'm a 70s baby, I'm old. So I remember growing up, and back in the day, they used to use this word tolerance when racism would come up. When you talk about racism, she's shaking her head, she knows. And people would say, well, I was little, so I would ask about racism. Both of my parents were born in the South. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. This is my phone, let me turn it off. If I can get it off. Okay. All right. So I was born in Detroit, but my parents are from the South. My mom's from Alabama, and my dad is from a little town called Fort Valley in Georgia. Riddled with racism. It's not the only place, but just racism like water fountains in a park. So, I remember having conversations when I was a little boy, 6, 7, 8, and I would say, why are people racist? Why do people hate other people? Why do people hate black people? Why do people not get along? Why is there racism? Why do church, even, I'm not a religious man, but even when I was little, I would ask, why don't church people get along? Like all these different denominations, why don't they get along? I just saw all these problems as a little kid. And people would say to me, every time I asked those questions, they would say, oh, it's just the lack of tolerance, it's tolerance. They don't know how to tolerate people. It's a lack of tolerance. And even as a kid, that just rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, tolerance? That's not even a good word. You're saying you have to tolerate somebody? You have to tolerate black people? I have to tolerate white people? Is that the theme here? You tolerate somebody that's different from you? The foundation was wrong then. We need to get our shit together. We need to teach our families about racism and not in these palatable, placating themes, sugar-coated words. We need to talk about the truth the ugliness of racism. Think about Emmett Till and what his mother did. If you don't know who Emmett Till is, I'll tell you as briefly as I can. Emmett Till was a young boy, went down south. He was up north in Chicago, went down south to visit his family. And a white woman accused him of winking at her. Like, wink, wink. Now, she died not long ago. Was it a year ago? Maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And right before she died, she confessed. And we already knew it was a lie. But she confessed 2 years ago. And she said, I made it all up. I lied. Let me tell you what happened to Emmett Till. She said that he winked at her. So a mob of white men went out. They went and kidnapped Emmett Till. They beat him. After beating him, they shot him in the head. After shooting him in the head, they tied him to a cotton gin fan with barbed wire. They threw him in a river, and when he was found days later, his body was swollen, probably about 3 or 4 times the size that he would normally be. That's the ugliness of racism. So what his mother did, she wanted to show the world the ugly face of racism. She didn't want to sugarcoat it. So she had an open casket funeral. She laid her baby in a casket wide open so the world could see. There was no internet back then, there were no cell phones. It went viral, and the world got to see the ugly face of racism. It's important, it's that important that we not sugarcoat racism when we're talking to people. Sometimes I talk to people and they will respond, well, Mario, it's just about being nice. You're such a nice person. If the world could just be nicer. That's not it. That's not it. Talking about racism isn't always nice. In fact, it should mostly not ever be nice.
Amen. Mario.
What's nice about talking about racism? All right, I'm gonna read a couple of things to you. I kind of have a lot of things to say. Lex teased me, but it's okay. Just gonna read a couple of things I wrote. One of them kind of leans into a theme of Black History Month, but that's okay, it's Black History Month.